Listen, Octavius, you gotta stop that.
It's Octavius, Mary.
To American audiences, British comedian Steve Coogan's biggest role so far may be the miniature Roman soldier in the hit film Night at the Museum.
You guys are really little.
We may be small, but our hearts are large, metaphorically speaking.
I'm not that famous in America.
Well, and all comedians know who you are.
You know, Ben Stiller thinks I'm cool, and Owen Wilson's a good friend of mine.
But he's big in the UK, and he owes it all to this man.
You're Alan Partridge.
Yes, I am.
Alan Partridge,
Yes.
the character that I'm very famous for in England, and is just a cult underground thing here in the US. It's what paid for my house and opened doors for me.
I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to shake your hand.
Well, I can see that. You're obviously enjoying yourself.
Yeah.
And for people here who don't know much about him,
You know, Alan Partridge is a failed talk show host.
who says totally inappropriate things all the time.
He says totally inappropriate things, and it's very funny.
What a lovely smile. You could have been throwing up all night for all I know, and yet your smile wouldn't show it. I don't know, perhaps that's how you keep your figure.
But it's Coogan's serious side that's been recognized by Americans.
The Best Picture nominees for 2013 are Philomena.
Philomena, a dramatic film Coogan produced, wrote, and stars in, has been nominated for Best Picture.
When did you hear about the nominations?
I was in bed in the hotel, and I didn't. Some people sit up to watch those announcements, and I think that's just like pulling teeth.
Right, that's painful.
No,
yeah.
you just can't.
Stomach churn.
And the phone rang very early, and I knew it would be good news because they wouldn't ring me to tell me bad news.
His movie received 4 nominations in total, including one for Dame Judi Dench, who plays Philomena Lee.
Hello, Philomena. Very nice to meet you. I'm Sister Claire. Sister Claire.
She was our #1 choice, so we didn't have to speak to anyone else.
How did she hear about it?
Well, I sweet-talked her agent, and she said, go to Judy's house and tell her. So I knocked on the door, and Dame Judi Dench answered the door and made me a sandwich and a cup of tea, and I told her a story. And I said, do you want to do it? And she said, yeah.
I was going to ask you, Martin, if it'd be possible not to use my real name when you write the story.
The film is a kind of odd couple road movie mixed with some old-fashioned sleuthing.
What about Anne Boleyn? That's a lovely name. Oh, well, somebody had that.
We're going to have to use your real name, Philomena. That's the way these things work.
But at the heart of the film is the soul of Philomena.
There are people who, for all the faults and criticisms and also problems that the church has had, the forgotten people are the ordinary people who lead these dignified, quiet, unremarkable lives, but lives that are honorable. And that's who Philomena is, and that's what he learns about that.
I still go to Mass, and I don't want to cause any fuss.
Philomena enlists the help of a cynical freelance journalist, Martin Sixsmith, played by Coogan.
I'm happy to answer any questions Philomena has.
Well, I'm asking you a question.
You're a journalist.
They go in search of her son, who had been taken from her in the 1950s. She and the toddler had been confined to a convent in Ireland, where she'd been abandoned when her family discovered she was pregnant out of wedlock.
It's one of those topics that I think people think, there's things that you don't talk about at dinner parties. But there's a lot of humor in the film. People laugh when they watch the film. And when people laugh, they go, oh, it's okay, we can have this conversation. It doesn't have to be nasty or unpleasant or difficult.
In fact, it was an image of laughter that originally drew Coogan to the real-life story of the real Philomena Lee.
I found this article in the Guardian newspaper online. Alongside the article was a photograph of Philomena herself and Martin Sixsmith, the journalist, sat together, and they were both laughing in the photograph. And I thought, that's so odd that this sad story, and that there she is laughing. And I thought, if I can get the laughter in this story, then it could be something which is enjoyable. I didn't want to make a depressing film.
Right. I watched this documentary that says a lot of Americans are huge. What if that happened to him?
What on earth makes you think he'd be obese?
Because of the size of the portions.
But his long history with humor wasn't a plus when he met the real Philomena for the first time. Her daughter was a tough sell.
She was a little suspicious, like, what does this comedy guy want to do with my mum? You know?
Right.
So I had to win their trust. It's not going to be a broad comedy. It's just going to be something that respects your mum and honors her.
What's done is done. What do you expect us to do about it now? Nothing.
We did that with Philomena, because we do have the jokes, but then when the chips are on the table, we've got the guts to be serious.
I'll tell you what you can do. Say sorry. How about that? Apologize. Stop trying to cover things up.
Coogan was able to gain their trust in part because Philomena Lee and Stephen John Coogan seemed to have an unspoken connection. Born in Manchester, England, Coogan is Irish, raised by devout Catholics.
Lots of siblings.
Yeah, I got 4 brothers and 2 sisters, and my mom and dad also fostered children.
Oh, my.
They would take them for a few months, sometimes a year, until they could get back on their feet or their families had sorted out their problems.
Compared to the nuns at the convent whom Philomena faced, Coogan's family represented a kind of opposite Catholic response to mothers in need. That experience influenced Coogan. Perhaps most important, he found his way of coping.
I talked to my sister recently. She said, half the time I would spend just saying, look at me, look at me. Anything to get some sort of attention, because it was like a big quite a noisy house, you know.
He became the funny one.
But not the class clown. I like to listen to comedy, and this is the days before VCRs. You had to be your own personal VCR. You had to watch the TV and remember what the show was like, because if you wanted to talk to people about it and they hadn't seen it, you had to do it, because you couldn't show it to them. So you had to learn. So it was actually quite a good training.
Turns out it was training not just for comedy, but for life.
Steve, big smile!
At 48, Steve Coogan is still listening carefully, and he's hoping audiences do too.
You just try and do something you think will be, you want it to register, you want people to see it, you don't want it to go under the radar. But, so it's definitely not under the radar.
No, it's not.